up in the club. All eyes on me.
All right, you guys. So today we are going to do our spoiler review for All Eyes on Me. I had an opportunity to check out the movie this weekend, and I'm going to give you what my thoughts are on the movie, a full spoiler review. So if you have not seen the movie, you might want to pause this and save this video for later after you've seen the movie, because I will be doing spoilers for this movie. For those who are watching this channel for the first time, I am a huge Tupac fan from day one, and I know pretty much all aspects of his career, and I'm going to give you guys my thoughts on the recent biopic that came out this weekend. So guys, let's get started on this All Eyes on Me review.
All right, you guys. So I want to start off, before we actually get into the review and my thoughts, I want to start off with the criticism on the film, or the critics' reviews on this particular film. Obviously, the film was smashed by the critics. I think it received a very low Rotten Tomato score. I want to say 27%, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But I know it was a very low score on it. One of the higher profile criticisms on the movie came from Jada Pinkett, where she described her scenes in the film where she was involved as inaccurate, which I tend to believe her in that regard after seeing the movie, and I'll go into more detail once I get into my full spoiler review on this. And then of course 50 Cent also trashed the movie, actually calling it trash. And I will address his comments as well later on. And then, of course, The Game and Snoop also came out with their praise for the movie, and actually encouraged people to go out and see the movie. Just a real brief overview of those high-profile comments in regards to the film. And I actually heard Jada Pinkett's comments prior to seeing the movie, which kind of gave me a feeling like, they might not be doing justice to the story and Tupac's legacy. So I was a bit concerned there. And then, of course, I also heard what 50 had to say before viewing the movie as well. So that kind of raised a couple of red flags for me. So getting into the film itself, my first impressions actually, in regards to the crowd. The theater was absolutely full. And when I say the theater was full, not only was our individual theater full, but the whole complex itself was completely full. Lots of us, and when I say us, I mean black people, were there. I've actually, and I went to view this at the Cinema 18 over here at the Howard Hughes complex. For those of you who are here in Los Angeles, you know where that's at here, just off of Sepulveda. And it's a very big complex. 18 theaters are on the inside there. I'm not sure how many screens were showing All Eyes on Me, but I can tell you there was a heavy presence of us there, which I haven't seen since I've been viewing movies there. And I can't recall a movie that it was centered around like I didn't see Notorious there. I didn't go see, I might have saw Straight Outta Compton there, and I'm trying to remember if the theater was full or not. I'm not sure. I can't remember back what the theater crowd size was, but I can tell you this theater was full. And then the makeup of the crowd was younger. I would say somewhere between the area of late teens, mid 20s was the age group of the crowd. The majority of the age group, of course, there were some individuals there in my particular age group, which is not going to go into specifics on what my age group is, but let's just say I am a part of Tupac's generation. So we'll just go with that right there. I was 25 at the time that Pac was 25, so you guys do the math on that. So getting right into the movie, and again, guys, there's going to be spoilers, so you might want to end the video at this point, because I am going to go into some details with this particular movie. So, those of you who have seen my reactions to the trailers for this particular movie, this is probably my most anticipated movie of the year. And I am a huge Star Wars fan, and I know that we have Episode 8 coming out this Christmas. But I can tell you, the hype for me was more on this movie because, again, I am a huge Tupac fan from day one. If you guys saw my reaction to the initial trailer for this movie, his first lyrics on Same Song with Digital Underground, I know the lyrics verbatim to this day. When I first heard his particular part in that song, I said to myself, this guy is incredible. And I followed him ever since that point. When his first album came out, Tupacalypse came out, I got it day one. I was bumping it from day one. I had worn When My Homies Call out in my car stereo at the time, and I had a cheap little car that had a boom box in the back, and the sound system wasn't all that great, but it bumped enough. And I tell you, I wore that song out. And by the time I was wearing that song out, the song or that particular single began to catch steam and really became very, very popular. And obviously, that was one of Pac's #1 hits. If you guys don't know what that song is, again, it is called When My Homies Call, and you might want to check that out because it's a really great song, and it's pretty much what put Pac on the map, and his career it didn't take off a shot to the moon at that point, but people recognized who he was and his talent, and obviously people knew that he was well on his way to being one of the best rappers around, depending on who you talk to. So getting into the movie, they start the movie off with Pac. I would have to say, and I'm just going off of the top of my head here in regards to trying to remember the specific timeline, but Pac was obviously in jail on the rape charges, the movie starts at that particular point. I want to say this is 1994, late 94, or mid 1994, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 1995. I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, it was going off at the top of my head, and we enter at this particular point in Pac's life, and they go back into some flashbacks of Pac's previous encounters and situations in his career. As many of you know, if you are a Pac fan, he was born in New York. He later moved where he attended school. Attended a school for the arts, and this is where he met Jada Pinkett, and all of that's accurate, all of that is true. Now, getting into Jada Pinkett and the comments that she made on some of the inaccuracies in regards to her relationship to Pac. Now, like I said earlier, I definitely tend to believe what Jada had to say here, that her relationship with Pac was a bit misrepresented here, and I would have to agree with her. Even though they didn't, there wasn't any sex scenes or kissing with Jada or anything like that. They didn't betray the relationship particularly in that manner, but they did portray the relationship with some sense of intimacy between the two. And I can tell you, Jada has consistently knocked that down way before this movie was even thought of. She knocked that theory down. So that's why I tend to believe what she says here in regards to her relationship with Pac and how it was depicted here in this particular film. Again, I have to give her kudos I have to say that I do side with Jada in regards to that particular portion of the film and the way her relationship was portrayed. I tend to believe what she has to say more than what the movie portrayed. But again, they didn't portray it as a full-blown relationship, boyfriend and girlfriend thing like that. It wasn't portrayed like that, but it was portrayed with a little bit more intimacy than was probably true. So that's that with Jada. So after that particular point of the film, we go more into the history of Pac and the beginnings, his situation with his mother. We all know that his mother had a drug abuse problem that is addressed in the film to a certain extent. Also, his the background, Black Panther background, is also explored in the first part of the film. We get confirmation from his stepfather and his background with the Black Panthers, and then of course his mother's involvement with the Black Panthers is also depicted there, showing Tupac in the womb as she is giving a press conference in regards to her acquittal on charges. So all of that is depicted there in the beginning of the film, which we know is all accurate, all true. Pac was born behind bars. That was that. And so then the film moves forward after Pac has been in Baltimore for a little while. Again, he is having to move and uprooted. Him and his sister are uprooted and are forced to move to California, specifically Oakland, California, Meridian, California, if I got that city name correct. And here, this is where Pac is exposed to West Coast life. And so just to keep moving forward here, Pac eventually comes into contact with Layla Steinberg, who eventually puts him in contact with Digital Underground. Pac becomes one of the background dancers for Digital Underground, and that's particularly how he got his start into hip-hop, working as a background dancer and roadie for Digital Underground. We find out later on the first time Pac is put on record is with on the same song with Digital Underground, and like I said, that was my first exposure to Tupac, and I've been following him ever since. And then of course we get into the situation, the little trouble that Pac had along the way, and I say little trouble, but Pac actually got into a few scrapes along the way in his career. The first being the incident at the I believe it was a carnival in Marin City in Oakland, where he got into a little scuffle with a couple of guys who were basically hating on him, and a innocent child ended up getting shot and killed. And obviously Pac took a lot of heat and blame for that, and that was also depicted in the movie, so I thought that was a really good job of depicting that with Tupac. And then of course there was the situation where Pac, again in Oakland, jaywalked across the street. A couple of officers pulled him over and roughed him up really, really bad, slammed his head into the ground and beat him up over a jaywalking ticket. Pac sued the Oakland Police Department over that, and even in one of his songs, he mentions that he bought himself a coupe off of the money that he sued the Oakland Police Department over. So obviously a really good job of inputting that accurate moment into Tupac, and it also starts to build this thing this persona that Pac had, and it wasn't anything that was created for Pac. It's just circumstances built it up, where he became this bad boy kind of, and he was known for getting into these little situations, and particular point, Strictly for My Niggas has just come out, and we actually get to see Pac's release party in New York for the album, and according to the producers, to the writers of the movie, this is where Pac already knows Big at this particular point. As a matter of fact, Pac kind of announces Big being at the release party. You know, as he walks in the door, he says, "Oh, Biggie Smalls is in the house." So they've already known each other at this particular point. And Big, he allows Big to rock the mic there on his release album party, and Big is rocking the mic, and Pac is up there. He's rolling his blunt, you know, or whatnot, whatever. And so this is our introduction to the relationship between Pac and Big, and this is where the story starts to get deep. This is at the time that Pac is filming Above the Rim, and again, he is in New York, and the party is being held at a particular club, and there is a individual at that club who is kind of a street figure, kind of a street boss, if you will. Pretty much runs his not runs the town, but you know, he holds weight in New York, and he's a drug dealer, whatever his situation is. My assumption is, and I'm not 100% sure about this, but this would be Haitian Jack. And anybody who knows that name knows who Haitian Jack is. Haitian Jack is a real person. At one point, he dated, I forget her name, Foxy Brown. At one point, they were dating, possibly at the time that Pac was hanging around this individual. But he befriended this particular individual and hung out a lot with him, evidently. And there's another scene that's depicted where they're on the shoot for Above the Rim, and Biggie shows up, and Biggie sees Pac is talking to this individual. I don't know the individual's name. I'm just going to call him Haitian Jack, because that is the real individual that this character that they're portraying here in this particular movie. I don't think they ever called him Haitian Jack in the movie. But Big comes to the comes to the shoot, and sees Pac hanging out with this particular guy, and he kind of warns Pac, "Hey man, this is a serious cat right here, man. So you watch your back, man." And Pac is like, "Hey man, I'm a serious cat too, so I ain't tripping." So we get there, and that's and if you ever listen to any of Biggie's interviews, and Tupac's interviews, and I've heard them all. I've listened to them all, man, because like I said, I was knee deep in this situation concerning Pac and Big and the East Coast versus West Coast. You know, like I said, I was a 25-year-old at that time, so this is all big time for me. You know, so in some of the interviews, Big even mentions that he warned Pac about these individuals that he was hanging out with. So. And so the way that the story tells it, or the writers for this particular movie tell it, is that there was a situation, obviously, with the young lady, and they showed this in the movie, the young lady who accused Pac and his entourage of raping her, where Pac, again, he's at the club and he's chilling, and this individual that I'm gonna call Haitian Jack, again, he was never referred to as Haitian Jack, but that is the character I believe that he was playing. Kind of puts this woman on Pac, and you know, he's like, "Hey Pac, this is whoop whoop whoop. I want you to meet her." And you know, she takes Pac to the dance floor, and she proceeds to, and I hope there's not any kids watching this, because it's going to get graphic, but she proceeds to do a little something for him on the floor, on the dance floor. Those of you who know the story, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to get graphic, but she performs an act on Tupac on the dance floor, and later on they go back to the room and chill out or whatever. So the way that the movie depicts it, so she's there, Haitian Jack is there. I think there's one other individual there from Haitian Jack's group or crew, and they're all chilling there. The old girl takes Pac back to the bedroom. She gives him a massage. Pac tells the girl, "Hey, you know what? I'm gonna go chill out. I'm gonna take off." Pac actually goes into the other room and gets some rest. He's asleep. Next thing they show in the movie, this is all depicted in the movie. This is how they presented this particular situation. So that's how I'm giving it to you guys. The girl busts into the room that Pac is sleeping in, and she's holding her clothes, and she's talking about she got raped and da 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 da. And Pac's like, "What are you talking about?" And he jumps up, and the girl runs out the room, and she runs out the hotel, and Pac runs up to Haitian Jack, and he's like, man, what's up? She just said that you guys raped her. What's going on? And he was like, and Haitian Jack's like, I don't know what she's talking about. And and so those two kind of go at it a little bit over that, but nothing much happens about it. Haitian Jack says, hey man, don't worry about it. I'm gonna take care of it. I'm gonna tell, I'm gonna take care of old girl. Don't you worry about it. So, and again, this is the way the movie depicts this situation. But Haitian Jack and his man go downstairs to try to calm old girl down. Once they get down there, the police are right there, and the bellboy. Then Pac eventually comes down in the elevator, and the bellboy points Pac out and says, "That's Pac right there." And the police immediately arrest Pac, and they arrest Haitian Jack and his crew and his guys, and so that's all. That's how they depict that particular situation. And then, of course, once the case goes to trial, Pac finds out that actually he is the only one that's up on the rape charges, and Haitian Jack and his guys are nowhere to be found. They actually, and I forget the exact legal term for it, but they basically wanted to have their own case separate from Pac, and Pac was basically left hanging on the rape charge with this girl. So after all of that is taken care of, then they get into they go into the situation where Pac is shot at Quam Studios, and I hope I got that studio name correct. But those of you who know the story or heard the story, this is where Big and Sean Puffy Combs, they're chilling at the studio, and they're recording at the studio, not knowing that Pac is going to be there. Well, the assumption is that they didn't know that Pac was going to be there. Pac was the reason why he ended up there at the studios is because he was going to do a song with Little Sean. He shows up at the studio, and then of course we all know what happens. He's confronted in the lobby of Quam Studios by a couple of individuals. Now, again, the way that the movie depicts this particular situation, these guys are Haitian Jack's guys, and in the movie, the way that they explain it, this particular character, and again, I'm calling him Haitian Jack, who is the true individual that was Pac, who Pac was hanging with at this time, and who Biggie warned him about. There's a scene where Haitian Jack and his guys are talking, and they're talking about what's going on with Pac and the rape case, and I guess Pac is what Pac's statement is, hey, where are the other guys who were supposed to be involved with this? Why am I the only one sitting here on trial? And so Haitian Jack, or they depict Haitian Jack saying, hey, nobody's going to touch Pac while I'm around. No one's going to touch Pac. But then his boys are like, you know what? Forget what he's talking about. We're going to get that dude. We're going to get Pac. So getting back to the Quam Studios, the situation at Quam Studios, these guys, these henchmen for Haitian Jack show up, and they attempt to rob Pac. In the process, they shoot Pac 5 times. As you guys all know, it's all well documented. And then, again, the situation where Pac, after the shooting happens and he's robbed, he goes upstairs. And he sees Big, but he's kind of out of it a little bit. But he sees Big's face, and seeing all these people, and he goes into the hospital. And there's a scene there. His mother there is with him at the hospital, and at this particular point, Pac has become nervous and doesn't trust anybody after the shooting. So much so that he checks himself out of the hospital against doctor orders, which I'm sure you guys all know that is all accurate, all true. As a matter of fact, he ended up showing up to his rape case trial in his wheelchair, still bandaged up, and of course, as we all know, he was found. He was not found guilty of rape, but he was found guilty of inappropriate touching. And again, that's how the movie depicts it. I don't know if that's the actual charge that he was found guilty on, but the way that the movie predicts portrays it is that he was found guilty on inappropriate touching. So, and that catches us up to where we start off in the movie, where Pac is in Rikers, and he's talking to this individual, and I don't know the individual's name, unfortunately, but he's kind of like a reporter or a journalist, basically, who's interviewing Pac and getting Pac's story. So it takes us back to that particular point, and now at this particular point, while Pac is locked up in Rikers, again, he's got mad legal fees that are piling up on him, so much so that he can't pay his $1 million bail. I think it was $1 million to get himself out. And if I'm not mistaken, Pac probably did a year or so at Rikers. Pac had a hard time getting his money from Interscope, even getting enough money to get him bailed out from Interscope. So this is where we enter Suge Knight and Death Row. So this is where Suge Knight comes into the story. He says that he's going to get Pac out, and all I need you to do is, you come make music with us. And Pac has a little list of demands: a house for his mom, a couple of other things, and Suge is like, no problem, we got this. We don't worry about it. So that's how Pac is able to get out of jail. And he really, honestly, he was actually supposed to go back to jail. He was only out on bail at that particular point, and that was all thanks to Suge Knight and Death Row. So now we are into Pac's Death Row day. As the movie goes along, we get to the point where he's now he has gone full on beef with Biggie and P. Diddy and Bad Boy. So the beef is full blown at this particular point. Now, this is the other thing that I have to mention about this movie, guys, and this is the real funny part about this movie. As a matter of fact, it drew laughs from the crowd. The depiction of Snoop Doggy Dogg. Now, what they did with this character, they did a real disservice to Snoop, and the good thing about it is Snoop didn't even say anything about it, because when he made his comments about the movie, Snoop was poorly represented in this movie. It sounded like they had a voiceover where the guy was lip syncing his lines. I guess he didn't have a good Snoop impression himself, so they had to have somebody else do his lines. And basically what they did was they just took some skinny guy off the street. He wasn't even a tall skinny guy like Snoop. He's probably just a little bit taller than Tupac in this movie, and they put this ridiculous afro on him and said that's Snoop. And that was a very, very poor job of depicting Snoop in this particular movie. And then the voiceover was absolutely terrible. So they did a real disservice to the Snoop character in this movie, and it was laughable. Like I said, it drew laughs from the crowd. So definitely when you hear some of the criticisms in regards to the acting in this movie, there is some legitimacy to that. Also, while I'm at it, Jada Pinkett character, who was played by, and bear with me for just a moment, Kat Graham, who played Jada Pinkett, and she did an excellent job. And there are some scenes where she looks like Jada Pinkett. Now, the only time that I can say where I didn't believe her as Jada Pinkett, there's a particular scene where Pac is at this club, and the East Coast West Coast beef is full blown, and for whatever reason, Jada Pinkett shows up at this club, and Pac is surrounded by women. He's chilling, he's having a good time, and Jada asks to speak to him for a moment, and she goes at him about this beef with Biggie, and she tells him, hey, this is not the Pac that I knew. Pac was about educating people. He wasn't about beefing with people or whatever that was all about. Now that particular scene right there, I have a problem with that scene for a couple of reasons. Number one, that was the only time in the movie where she did not look or sound like Jada Pinkett to me. As a matter of fact, she didn't even. Let me just say this: she didn't even seem like her nationality was black at that point. I actually got the feeling that she was more Latina at that particular point. Her mannerisms, the way she was looking at Pac, it was as if she came in as a different character and not the same character. That was a bit off for me as well. So again, when you hear the criticism against the acting, again, that was poor acting there. It was really, really cool to see Money B playing himself here in this particular movie. So that was absolutely cool. And all the scenes with Digital Underground was really, really nice. And it was a straight throwback. It threw me back. So getting back to the movie so we can cap this all off, guys. So like I said, the beef is full blown. And we shift to Pac and all of Death Row being in New York at this point, just before the infamous Vegas trip. And the significance of this is where Snoop goes on the radio with Angie Martinez, if I'm not mistaken. I hope I got that right. But he goes on the radio and he's asked about Biggie and P. Diddy and his relationship with them, and he goes on to say that those are his homeboys, and I remember at the time having a feeling that Snoop didn't want any parts of this East Coast West Coast beef, and evidently once he made those comments, it just was out there that, hey, I'm not a part of this beef, you know what I'm saying? P. Diddy and Biggie. He basically said, no, those are my homeboys, and bowed out of the beef. So obviously that created a kind of a friction between not only Pac, but also with Suge Knight as well. So, and there's an interview with Snoop. He did an interview a couple of days ago before the movie came out with, I believe it was with Hot 97, and he explains that particular incident and the plane ride home. Which, according to what Snoop said in that interview, was accurately depicted in the movie, where on the flight home, Snoop's security is told that they're not going to be able to ride on the private plane with Pac, Suge Knight, but definitely Snoop is going to be able to ride with them. So Snoop didn't have his security detail there with him. And he's trying to talk to Pac, and Pac is ignoring him. So he kind of got that vibe like, this is not going to be a cool situation for me. So he proceeds to grab himself a fork and a knife, if I'm not mistaken, and he sits on the back of the plane with the blanket over his head, and he's ready for something to happen. Now, obviously, nothing happened on the flight, but he got that vibe. From the guys, and he even at the end of the flight, he goes to Tupac, and he's asking Tupac, "Hey man, you going to Vegas?" And Pac just kind of waves him off, and all of this was all expressed by Snoop in his interview, and it was accurately depicted that way in the movie. So we're at that particular point in the movie, and then of course we get to Vegas. They show the incident between Pac and Orlando Anderson, who is the guy who they beat up or jumped in the lobby of the MGM Grand, and everyone has seen that video. And if you haven't, I'm sure you can go see it on YouTube. So they depicted that all accurate. now they get into a situation where after Pac has jumped this guy and Orlando Anderson, Pac goes back to his hotel room where his girlfriend at the time, who is Quincy Jones' daughter, is there in Vegas with him, and they kind of depict the situation where she's asking Pac not to go to Club 662 with Suge, and Pac says, "You know what? I have no choice. I have to go." And they even do this little thing where after he leaves the hotel room, he starts to walk back to the door, and Quincy Jones' daughter is she's at the door. So they're giving you this feeling like Pac almost didn't jump in that BMW with Suge Knight and take off the Club 662. He almost stayed with his girlfriend, and I don't know how accurate that particular part is. I want to say that they put that in there just to add a little more drama to the situation. I don't believe that she was there in Vegas with him, and I'm sure eventually that will come out if it's not been depicted right. So again, I think that's where the producers and writers kind of took liberties with the story to kind of build up the drama for what was coming next, which we obviously all know what came next. And they, of course, showed this in the movie where Pac is actually gunned down. One of the things about that particular part of the movie that I noticed that was inaccurate. They had the two girls that Pac and Suge were talking to the left side of the car, which would have been the left turn lane, I believe. And that is inaccurate. The girls were actually on Pac's side of the car, not on the driver's side of the car. And so that was a bit inaccurate. And also, it doesn't really matter, but in the actual incident, the girls were driving a green convertible Sebring, and this they were driving a white Camry for some reason. So that was a bit inaccurate there. And then, of course, they had the white Cadillac pull up on the side. The shots are fired. Suge takes off, and then he crashes into the median. Then the Vegas cops show up on bikes, all accurately depicted. And then the security team that was riding behind Suge and Tupac eventually shows up. And again, I don't know how accurate this is, and I have not heard this particular story, but and I forget his name, unfortunately, but Tupac's main security guy, he's done interviews, and he's been a part of a lot of not biopics, but documentaries on Pac, and he's told his story on Pac's last days and whatnot, and so I've heard from this particular security guy a lot since Pac's death. He's done several interviews and done several different documentaries, and never at any time did he describe himself as an LAPD officer, not that I recall. However, in the movie, they show him showing up on the scene and saying LAPD, LAPD, flashing a badge. I don't know how accurate that is, but they definitely show that in the movie. So I don't know how accurate that is, but I had a little bit of problem with that right there. But it's not a big deal. And he may have been LAPD, but I've never heard him refer to that. And as a matter of fact, I wish I can remember his name, but he's passed on now as well. So then, of course, Pac is laying there, and they're showing him laying there on the street, and then they quickly go to a caption that explains that Pac lived for 6 and he died, and all of that, and that's the end of the movie. Now, I think there was a couple of opportunities that they missed in this particular film in regards to that particular scene. I think it would have been very powerful to see what the scene was like when Pac was in the hospital and all of the chaos was going on and all of the accusations were flying around that Suge had him set up, or that Diddy paid the Southside Crips to do this. I think they could have gone into that just a bit more, because those 6 days was absolute chaos going on at that time. And I can tell you personally in my life what I was doing at that particular time. That night that Pac was shot, I actually was in LA County Jail on a suspended license ticket that I received that Friday prior, or actually, I'm sorry, that Thursday prior. So I was sitting in county jail waiting to go to court that following Monday, and the only way and lucky for me is that I was in a dorm that had a television in it, and the news came on and they talked about Pac being shot. So that's how I actually found out that Pac was shot. And then of course I did know, and I can't explain how I knew. It might have been from other news coverage, but I knew that Pac had survived the first 24 hours of it, and the first few days, because I'm still locked up. As a matter of fact, I didn't get out of jail until county jail until that following Friday. Actually, Friday the 13th was the day that I got out, and or maybe no, I'm sorry, I got out that Thursday. That Thursday. So I got out on Thursday the 12th, and my girlfriend at the time came to pick me up, and we were going to go hang out. And at this point, my thought was, just like everyone else's thought was, and even Biggie expressed this in one of his interviews. After the first 24 to 48 hours that Pac survived, I'm like, well, hey, he's gonna live through this. He's gonna live through it, and he's gonna make a couple of records about it now. Just like what Big said. That Big said the same thing. Hey, he's gonna survive, and he's gonna make a couple of records about it. So later on that evening, that's when the news came that Pac had passed on, and I'll never forget it. I was at my girlfriend's house, and there was quite a few people at the house. This house was kind of like the party house for the block. So this is where everybody came to hang out and kick it and drink and whatnot, smoke and whatnot. California lifestyle. Everyone was obviously shocked. No one more than myself was shocked that he did pass. And I can tell you, at that particular time, I was totally crushed, because he was my favorite rapper by far, and he had such a powerful presence, not only with his lyrics and his rapping, but the way he thought, and how smart he was, and that's what really drew me to him. And I don't know what Pac would have done had he survived, but I'm pretty sure he would have gone on to do some very, very significant things. I mean, he was already doing a bunch of movies all the way up until his death. He had movies, projects that he was working on. In the movie, it was depicted that he was basically going to run Death Row East, which was a plan that Suge Knight came up with, to basically prevent Pac from leaving the label. So my overall thoughts on the film, I really, really did like the film, to be honest with you. I thought they did a very decent job of trying to be as accurate as possible to Pac's legacy and his story. Where I feel like they dropped the ball is obviously the situation with Jada Pinkett and her character. I really feel like they dropped the ball is obviously the situation with Jada Pinkett and her character. I really feel like they dropped the ball is obviously the situation with Jada Pinkett and her character. I really feel like the situation with Jada Pinkett and her character. I really feel like the situation with Jada Pinkett and her character. I really feel like they did try to make something more out of that relationship than what it was. And I don't think it was as necessary to include Jada Pinkett's character in the movie as much as they did, especially that last scene where she shows up to the club. I don't think that was necessary, and you could have filled that in with something else that was more significant as well. And then, of course, like I had mentioned, the knock on some of the acting in the film, of course, that Snoop character was absolutely awful. The Jada Pinkett character was decent up until her last scene. I think she dropped the ball there. I thought Denari, who did Afina Shakur, Pac's mother, I thought she did a really, really good job with her character. I thought Demetrius Shipp, who obviously played Tupac, did an excellent job of playing Tupac. I mean, of course, the likeness was on point. And in regards to his likeness, and I'm not going to say he's a dead on Pac lookalike, but at certain angles, at certain sides, he looks like Tupac, man. I mean, there's a lot of times in there in the movie where you're like, whoa, damn, he looks, that's too much, you know. But I think he did an excellent job playing Pac. If I had to criticize any portion of his acting in regards to Tupac, and again, I'm a Tupac fan. There's not a song, there's not an interview, there's not anything that I haven't seen in regards to Pac. There's a scene where Pac is outside of the courthouse in New York during his rape trial. And you can see that interview. You can look it up on YouTube. And the movie depicts this particular scene. And again, if I had to knock Demetrius's interpretation of Pac at all, it would be for that particular scene. And the only reason for that is if you ever seen any of Pac's interviews and videos, whenever he's rapping on stage or whenever he's speaking or doing anything, Pac does it with passion. And he does it with so much passion that he's moving his head and he's constantly moving his hands, he's moving his head. Everything is done with passion. You know, and that's one of the reasons why I like Pac, because he has so much passion. And he believed in every single thing that he said, every single thing that he did, right or wrong, he believed in it. And I didn't feel like Demetrius in that one particular scene where he's outside the courthouse, and you can go and see the Pac's actual interview, and Pac is speaking with passion. And you know, he's talking about these guys. Why? How come these other guys aren't on trial while I'm on trial? You know what I'm saying? And I just didn't feel like Demetrius sold it the way Pac would have sold it, because that was the thing about Pac. He could sell you on anything. He'll have you buying stuff that you don't even need to buy. You know what I'm saying? Because he was that type of guy. Because he had that type of passion. And I think there are certain times where Demetrius didn't quite catch that passion from Pac. But I mean, it's hard to duplicate something like that and make it seem realistic. And so I don't fault him for not being able to reach that particular level. But other than that, he did an excellent job as Tupac. So I thought he did a really, really good job. But again, guys, I thought the movie was fairly good. I thought it was a very good movie. Not the best movie I've ever seen, not the best biopic that I've ever seen. I think it somewhat does some justice to Pac's legacy. However, I think they could have done a little better. There were points of the movie where it was a bit slow. I'm trying to think of what scenes they were, but there were some points where the movie was a bit slow and kind of dragged a little bit. And me being a Pac fan, I consume everything Pac. So for me to sit here and say, well, there were parts that were slow in the film, I can imagine that somebody who's not a real Pac fan during those slow times of the film were like, oh God, this is unnecessary. So and I haven't the person that I went to see the movie with, and she doesn't want to have her name revealed, so I'm not going to expose her here on this video. But with her not really being a Pac fan, but obviously she knew who Pac was, she enjoyed the movie. Actually, she thought it was really good. She might have actually enjoyed it a bit more than I did. So that's a bit telling in itself. After the film was over, there were some claps and applause for the film, but it wasn't overall the whole crowd clapping. So just to give you an indication of what people thought, I believe the cinema score for the film was a C+ on this. So it would seem that the fans enjoyed it a bit more than the critics did. Guys, that's my review of All Eyes on Me, my spoiler review. But what I want to know is, did you go see the movie this weekend? And what was your crowd like? Did you have a full house there? Was it what was the demographic like? Was it majority young people, or was it the older crowd, or maybe a 40+ crowd, which would be in my demographic, and also pretty much the hardcore Pac fan demographic would probably be anywhere between 35 to 45. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was a good portion of the demographic in that age range there. So I want to know if what the makeup of your particular crowd was. And then obviously, what did you think about the way that they portrayed Pac? Do you think they were accurate? What do you think about what Jada had to say and the accuracy of her relationship with Pac and how it was portrayed in this movie? Do you agree with 50 Cent and believe that this movie was trash? Or are you siding with The Game and Snoop, who actually enjoyed this movie and thought it was a great movie and a movie that people should go out and see? My recommendation is that I believe you should go out and see this movie. And even if you don't know anything about Pac, I think the movie will do enough to kind of get you to know who he is. But if you really, really want to know who Pac was, I would strongly suggest that you not only dive into his music and listen to his music lyrically, I would also suggest that you check out some of his interviews. Because that's where you're going to get the real Pac and who he really, really was, and how passionate he was about everything that he did. And that's why there's not another artist like him out there. There's not another rap artist. That's why all these rappers, just the other day, Young Thug says that he's the new Tupac. Impossible. You can't be the new Tupac, because besides all the crazy stuff that he does, wearing dresses and all that other stuff that Pac would never do, he lacks the passion that Pac has. You can't be Pac because you don't have that passion for the game like Pac had it. You don't have that passion, and it's a shame. And the other thing is that I wanted to mention here in regards to Pac and versus what rap is today. Pac never at any time in his career said, "Oh, I'm the new Rakim of the game. I'm the new LL Cool J. I'm the new whatever." You know what I'm saying? He never made that comparison to himself. He already knew that he was going to be the first Pac. He was going to be his own man. He was going to set his own legacy. And that's what a lot of these young rappers are lacking today. They want to be the next Tupac, or they want to be the next Jay-Z. You know what I'm saying? And then not only that, but they're trying so hard to be different that they've gotten to the point where they're wearing dresses and they're and whatever, and carrying purses or whatever they want to do, you know, and trying to stand out from the crowd. And it's all a gimmick. It's all a gimmick to me. It's not real. You're not passionate about it. You're just trying to be different, and you're trying to show people that you're different, and that's how you're going to put the attention on yourself A young thug calling himself the next Pac. He's just trying to draw attention to himself. He's not trying to be anything like Pac, and he knows he's nothing like Pac. But that's what these young guys have to do nowadays. They can't stand on their own too and be who they are. They have to try and be somebody else so they can get some attention. And it's unfortunate, but that's what the game has become. And that's why Pac was so important, because he is one of the last rappers who wanted to stand on their own too and not be the next whoever. They were going to be the first of who they are. Kind of like Kendrick Lamar. Even though Kendrick does make a lot of references to Pac, I don't think he's trying to be the next Pac. I think he's trying to be the first Kendrick Lamar. And so that's why he gets respect. So guys, there it is. That is my spoiler review for All Eyes on Me. I want to know what your thoughts are. Did you enjoy the movie? Did you like it? What are your criticisms on the movie? What do you praise about the movie? Guys, please put those comments down below. I will be checking. I will be responding. I'm going to give you my thoughts on what your comments are. So guys, put those comments down below. I want to hear from you. So guys, I want to thank you very much for watching my spoiler review. Please like and subscribe. And guys, I will catch you on the next movie review.